And during our men's breakout session, I learned that we have two gentlemen and their wives here who they've been married 30 years. One couple's been married 30 years, and one's been married for 31 years. And so they're going to be our new guest speakers. Tabitha and I are going to get down. They got a lot more. They have a lot more wisdom than we do. No, I told both the guys. I said, "Go ahead and prepare your wives. I might call y'all up at the end of the day and have y'all share some wisdom with us." And they're like, "Oh, don't do that. Don't do that." So we're back for session 2 actually, called "Can We Talk?" That's the most dreaded word sometimes. How many of you have ever went to your spouse and said, "Can we talk?" Yeah. And as a spouse who's receiving that question, your immediate first thought and reaction is like, "Oh no. Uh-oh. I done something I don't know about, or something's going on." Okay? So this session is all about communication. We're going to touch on conflict resolution in this session as well, and hopefully we have time at the end some forgiveness, because that's also important. So as you already know, men and women, we communicate very differently, right? I mean, is there anybody here today that does not know that? To illustrate and to get us kicked off for this session, I want to just play you a really short, quick video that highlights the differences of how men and women communicate, and then we're going to talk about it. So Trey, you'll hit the video. All right, so hopefully you thought that was funny like I did. I've seen that video many times, and every time I watch it, I laugh. So that illustrates maybe some of you and your spouses have experienced this exact thing we just saw in the video. So let's talk about the way women generally communicate. Now, again, I say generally because I'm not lumping all women into one category. I know there are different people that communicate different ways, and we're talking about the way men generally communicate. Women, if you hear women talk, they're like a spider web. They're all over the place, but they're interconnected, and it's usually infused with lots of emotion and feelings, okay? Now, men, on the other hand, when you hear men talk to one another, it's very linear in nature. It's very short, to the point, no feelings, no details, just straight to the point, okay? So that is just the basic fundamental ways, usually, again, I'm speaking generally here, men and women communicate. Neither way is right or wrong. It's just different. So oftentimes in marriage, because of the way we naturally communicate, it leads to ineffective communication between husband and wife. And so what we're going to talk about are some ways that husbands and wives can effectively communicate with one another.
So that brings us to main point 1, and we need to talk. So I know y'all don't have the outline like we did in Pastor Brandon's, but if y'all want to write this one down, healthy and consistent communication is a must in a healthy marriage. Healthy and consistent communication is a must in a healthy marriage. And so that brings us to Proverbs chapter 15, verse 1. A gentle answer turns away wrath, and a harsh word stirs up anger. So, just a little example. He didn't know I was going to give this example either.
Oh, well.
So, I'm at home all day with the 3-year-old. He's destroyed the house 3-4 times. I've done cleaned up, I don't know how many times. Now, Matt likes to come home to a clean house. He wants everything in its place, nothing messy, no dishes everywhere.
It's a problem. It's OCD.
So, I'm cooking dinner, and once again, Josiah has destroyed the house, and here comes in Matt. Like, oh, Lord, here we go. The kitchen's a mess because I'm still trying to cook dinner, right? Because I hadn't got that done. And he always greets me when he comes in. Hey, babe. Hey. He comes in the kitchen. What have you been doing all day?
Not the right thing to say, by the way.
Most of y'all don't know me, right? But I want to come at him with, are you serious? Get out of here. Like, go back outside and come back in. But, of course, that is going to set the tone for the rest of the evening. There's going to be tension. There's going to be frustration and anger. So I've gotten better. If he does that, I'm like, well, I know you can't see everything I've done, but I promise you I've cleaned this up about 3 times, and I'm trying to get dinner done, don't worry about it. I'll get it. Go get your clothes undone so we can sit down and have dinner. And the rest of the evening's much better. I can't say that sometimes I still don't
Sometimes
come at him after he comes at me. But it definitely makes a difference. And I think, since our separation, that has been a major thing that has helped us, is to remember when we're communicating. It's not what we say, but how we say it. Proverbs 18:21, the tongue has the power of life and death, and those who love it will eat its fruit. So the words that we use have power. So they either have the power to build your spouse up or tear them down, to encourage or discourage, to praise or to criticize. So it's important that we remember and we think about what we're going to say before we say it. Are we building our spouse up? Are we encouraging them? Because I can promise you, if you're building them up, encouraging your spouse or praising them, your husband's feeling respected and your wife is feeling loved. So that goes into, we're going to go into communication styles, and it's important to know what kind of communicator your spouse is.
So there's two main types of communication styles. There is and Trey, you stole my thunder, by the way, whenever we were getting ready in the men's group. So there are the land the plane communicators, meaning those communicators, they're not interested in all the feelings and the emotions and the details and the fluffy extra stuff. They just want you to land the plane and get to the point. That's one style. And then you have the enjoy the ride communicators. They're all about the extra fluffy, detailed feelings and specifics, and every single detail of the story matters. Now, ironically, as you guys probably can imagine, most men fall in the land of plane, and then most women fall in enjoy the ride. But we're actually opposite. I am more of the enjoy the ride communicator, and she is more of the land the plane. And because we use those terms now, it's something that we've learned. She'll say, Matt, land the plane. And that's my cue. I know to just get straight to the point. Now, on the other hand, when I'm telling something that I feel like is really important that she knows all the details to, I'll say, no, just enjoy the ride. Just enjoy the ride, and she knows what that means. So it's just a funny thing that you and your spouse can think of and talk about when you're communicating. But you need to know what your spouse is when it comes to that communication style. Another important thing to remember when it comes to communication with your spouse is always respond emotion to emotion, fact with fact. Emotion to emotion, fact to fact. So let me give you an example of what I'm talking about. Sometimes I'll come home and I'm very irritable. I've been like a really stressful, hard day at work, and I'll come in the door and I'll tell, hey babe, give her a kiss like I normally do, and I'll just say, man, I'm just stressed out. I'm irritable. This happened. This person did this. I can't believe it. Blah 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 blah. And the way that she responds, that's a lot of emotion.
The kids need a bath. So the kids need a bath.
Right. Yeah. So that would be responding in the opposite way of responding emotion with fact. But the way you respond emotion to emotion would be her saying what she normally will say. I know you seem stressed. Honey. What can I do to help you? That's responding emotion with emotion. And then again, fact to fact. I'm trying to think of an example of fact to fact. So if she says, honey, does this shirt make me look big? I shouldn't get all emotional about that. I should just say, no, you look beautiful. Fact to fact. Like, she is beautiful. All right, so respond emotion with emotion, fact to fact.
So it's always important when communicating is to listen. Listen when your spouse is speaking. Care enough to listen to your spouse and acknowledge and process what they're saying. And you shouldn't be thinking about what your rebuttal is going to be or what you got to do in the next room with the kids. Listen to what they're saying. And ladies, when talking to your husbands, it's important to get to the fact and to the point. Most men are a land the plane communicator most of the time. And also, ladies, stop expecting your husbands to read your mind. They're not mind readers. As much as we want them to be, they're not. So if you're feeling some sort of way and they come in and they're picking or joking and you're just not in the mood for that, you need to let them know in a loving way. But let them know that you're not in the mood for all that joking or whatever it may be.
I think I heard some guys say, when there was half said, ladies, stop expecting your husband to read your mind. I think I heard an amen in the back.
And if you don't, one more thing about that. If you don't, I know for us, there's, we come from 2 different backgrounds, family. I have a dysfunctional family, so sometimes I might come to him with some family drama. He wants to fix it. I don't need him to fix it. I just want him to listen to what I'm saying. And that took a long time for us to figure out, how are we going to hint, like, I don't need you to say anything back. I just want you to listen to me. So now what works for us now is, let me tell you what happened today with my mama, but I just want you to listen. So then hits his cue. I don't need you in your mind back here trying to tell me how to fix my mama, because I can't fix her. Lord knows you can't. Like, just listen. So try to figure out a way between your spouses to, when you don't want that feedback, you just simply want somebody to listen to you, that's what you're coming for.
Fellas, it's important, and I said this up there in our group breakout. I'm going to say it again because it's important. It's worth saying twice. It's important that you have the pulse of your wife at all times. And you cannot have the pulse of your wife at all times if you do not spend quality time with her. So when your wife is communicating with you, it's important, fellas, that you put the phone down, the TV remote down, turn the TV off or whatever it is. I'm really guilty of that all the time. Tabitha will say, Matt, I'm right here. TV's over there, I'm right here. So it's important that you take away the distractions and listen and understand what your wife is feeling. So that, again, brings me to my next point, which is you got to spend quality time so you can communicate. And quality time means uninterrupted. And so oftentimes when we talk with couples, they'll say, we haven't done anything without kids in, months or years sometimes. And you guys, those of you who have young kids, we have young kids, we have an 8-year-old, 3-year-old, it's virtually impossible to have a uninterrupted conversation with kids, young kids. And so you have to be intentional about that. You have to carve out time in your week or in your month to do things where it's just you and your spouse. For us, we tend to do that at nights when we get in the bed. That's our time. We talk, and we do that. That's the best time for us because we don't have any interruptions. We also are intentional about having at least one date night every month. That's not something we used to do prior to our separation. But now, because we learned so much during that time, we now have a date night at least once a month where we go out, we get somebody to watch the kids, and we just focus on ourselves and our relationship. Proverbs 7:24 says, now then, my son, listen to me, pay attention to what I say. So this leads us to the next point. So oftentimes, because couples don't spend the quality time they need together, they don't know how each other communicate, it leads to conflict, which brings us to our next topic within this session, conflict resolution. First and foremost, your spouse is not your enemy.
Say it again.
Your spouse is not your enemy. Every couple will have conflict. I don't care at what stage you are in your marriage, whether you are at the 30-year mark, which we have here, or you are at the 3rd-year mark or the 1st-year mark. You will have conflict. It's inevitable. It's when and how you choose to deal with that conflict that determines the outcome and the overall, the health of your marriage. So when and how. Again, I encourage you to write those two words down, when and how. It's not appropriate to address conflict when you are at your in-laws' house or your friend's house or in a public setting. That is not the appropriate time to address it. It's also not the appropriate time to address conflict when it's 9:30 at night, you and your spouse have both worked all day long, you're both exhausted, you're both just ready to go to sleep, and you want to talk about what she or he did last night that made you mad. It's not the appropriate time. Timing is everything. It's also not the appropriate time to address conflict when your kids are in the room with you. And I know that happens, and we're guilty of that sometimes as well. And the how part. Your approach is everything. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that in a few minutes. So main point number 2. When conflict occurs, we want you to pause. Notice we said pause and not stop. When the word stop means you do not intend to pick back up, or you do not intend to continue. The word pause means you intend to pick back up or continue. If you pause the TV or pause the movie, your intention is to unpause it and continue, right? So when you get into a conflict with your spouse, we want you to pause, and we're going to explain, Tabitha's going to explain what each letter of the word pause means.
So we're going to turn pause into an acronym here. So the P is for pray first. Pray for how you're going to handle the situation and let the Lord speak through you. So, in your prayer about whatever's going on, ask the Lord, how do I handle this? Lord, let it be your words, not mine, when I approach this. And then ask yourself the A. Ask yourself the question, or ask questions. Does this or should this require conflict or confrontation? Is it even worth it? Is it too petty?
If it's not something that's going to matter 3 days from now, it probably isn't worth it. You unconditionally love. Ask yourself, how did I contribute to the problem? That's tough, right? Because it's not you, it's them. Not so. Just go back to our story real quick. When we were reconciling, we were in counseling. Of course, it was all my fault. I had the affair. He didn't do anything wrong. Counselor looked at him and said, how'd you play a part in this? And I did not like that.
So in everything we do, you have played some part. And I would say his part was we had become emotionally disconnected. Things that he had done in the past rolled over and that I had not forgiven and let go of. So it's getting down to, well, what did I do to make them feel this way? Or maybe they reacted this way because I said this, or I responded this way. So really think about that. S is seek a resolution. Be sure to confront the conflict in a loving manner. Seek ways to resolve the problem in a healthy and loving manner rather than simply worrying about being right.
Let me tell you, fellas, it's better to be happy than be right.
It's not about being right. It's about coming to a resolution on how you're going to fix the problem and not sweeping it under the rug than being right. Compromising. And then the E, exercise grace and forgiveness. Talk through it and then apologize. I know for years saying I'm sorry was really hard for me because I ain't apologizing if I don't mean it.
Can't tell you how many times I've heard that. I ain't saying it if I don't mean it.
So even if you don't do something wrong, apologize. I have come a long way.
You sure have.
And I apologize more now than ever. Even if I think I'm right, I still apologize. The point is that you're both able to love one another and move past the conflict in a healthy manner.
So in discussing a conflict, be sure to stay on topic. So if you're talking about the fact that You don't like how your spouse comes in and they do what I do sometimes, and they notice everything that you haven't done instead of noticing what you have done. If that's the topic, stay on topic. Don't bring up, the fact that I didn't wash the car last week and I said I was going to, and the fact that I haven't given Josiah a bath in, 3 weeks. That's not even part of the topic, right? And so what that does is it just complicates your ability to communicate effectively and to resolve the conflict that's at hand. It also reinforces to your spouse that you have not forgiven them, or that you have not brought to their attention something that's been bothering you. That now you decide to just bring it out, right? So stay on topic. And if and when you do not resolve conflict gently, it communicates, then communication ends. And when communication ends, then you become more like roommates instead of a married couple. So again, I'm going to say it again. If and when you do not resolve conflict gently, communication ends, and you become more like a roommates than a married couple. The other person, and this is true for all people, but definitely in marriages. For women, in order to solve conflict in a healthy manner, they have to feel safe, man. If they don't feel safe communicating with us, they're not going to speak. They're not going to speak openly. Women, for us as men, we need to feel respected. That's a major emotion that we need from you to feel like you're hearing us and that you understand us. Respect is a huge thing for men.
And when you're in a heat of an argument and you don't feel like you're getting anywhere, know when to call a timeout. And a timeout is not a timeout and we're not going to come back to it, but with a timeout with the time that you both agree on that you're to come back to. I know for years you hear, don't go to bed angry. Well, that's true.
Bible speaks on it too.
Bible speaks on it. But I feel like that, honey, I love you and we're going to resolve this. But let's come back. Let's sleep on this tonight and let's come back this in the morning or tomorrow afternoon. Whatever's going to work. And a lot of times, the Lord has worked with both of you at that point, and it doesn't matter. Whatever it is that you were in the heat of fighting about, it's not as big of a deal. So if you get to that point, call that time out and agree on the time to come back together. And you're not always going to agree on everything. It's okay. Agree to disagree. We have to do that sometimes. So approach is everything. Timing is key. And like he said, never try to resolve a conflict in public. It's not going to go well. It's going to make things worse. You're going to get home, and then it's going to be a big explosion. 1 Peter chapter 3, verse 1. So wives, in the same way, submit yourselves to your husband, so that if any of them do not believe the word, they may be won over without words by the behavior of their wives. Ephesians 5:25, husbands, love your wives just as Christ loved the church and gave himself up for her.
That's a heavy verse, fellas. Loving your wife as Christ loves the church. What does that mean? Well, it means a lot of things. It means we're humble. It means we're selfless. It means we put all we have into it. It means our love is unconditional. It means that we protect. It means a lot of things. So I think it's easy to read that as men and say, oh, okay, that's Christ loved the church. Okay, I know what that means. But do you really sit there and think through what does that mean? And what adjectives come to mind when you hear that? Another thing that's really important when you're in the heat of a conflict is never use the D word. Never even bringing up the divorce word. I can't tell you how many times we've heard that said, and it causes so much irreparable damage. It puts not deceit, that's not what I'm looking for, doubt in your spouse. And that is not a love. It's not a God. Another thing about communication that's super important is your body language. Research on communication, and this is something I talk to about with my teachers a lot as an educator. The research shows that when we communicate, 80% of our communication is body language. It is our posture. It is our eyes. Are we making eye contact with the person? Do we have our arms crossed? Are we slouched down? Is our tone of voice firm, or is our tone of voice, timid? Is our tone of voice high? Are we talking fast? Are we talking slow? All those things matter when it comes to communication. So you have to be cognizant of what your body posture looks like and your body language looks like, because it speaks more than what you actually say. Conflicts let us learn more about our spouses. And it helps us grow together when we have healthy conflict. As she's already talked about our testimony, that was conflicts and conflict, all right? And if you would have asked me in the middle of the conflict, do I think that it was going to help us grow to where we are now in our marriage, I would have been like, no. I have no desire to even talk to her. I more or less, have a healthy relationship with her. But when God reconciled our marriage, and we chose to work through that conflict reveals so much to us about one another. And because we chose to deal with it and to restore it in a healthy way, then we did learn a ton about one another. 1 Corinthians 13, 4 through 7. This is a really important verse for us. This is in our marriage vows. And when we did our vows, what do you call it? Renewal vows? Renewal. When we renewed our vows, we had this: love is patient, love is kind, it does not envy, it does not boast, it is not proud, it does not dishonor others, it is not self-seeking, it is not easily angered, it keeps no records of wrongs. Love does not delight in evil, but rejoices with the truth. It always protects, always trusts, always hopes, and always perseveres.
So that brings us into forgiveness. And a lot of us find forgiveness hard. But the Bible does command us to forgive always. So when we're in an argument or something's going on, let God worry about fixing or making everything right. We need to focus on forgiveness and restoration. I feel like a lot of times we want to fix it and make it right and sometimes we just want to say, well, in order to forgive, they got to fix it, or they're going to have to come to me and make this right. Forgiveness is more for you than the other person. And if you will pray for your spouse and let God do the work, you will see some things change. Romans 12:19. Do not take revenge, my dear friends, but leave room for God's wrath. For it is written, it's mine to avenge, I will repay, says the Lord. So like I say, let the Lord do the work. As followers and believers of Christ, forgiveness, like I said, is not an option. In Ephesians 4:32, be kind to one another, tenderhearted, forgiving one another as God in Christ forgave you. So unforgiveness is something that will poison your heart and keep you from realizing God's blessing in your life. I feel like when we don't forgive, we're carrying that burden around, not the other person. So you are robbing yourself from a blessing.
Mm-hmm. I'll never forget this story or a sermon always sticks in my mind when it comes to forgiveness. One of the second trips I think I went to Haiti here with our church group. Pastor Brandon went on that trip and he spoke. He did a sermon in the Haitian church on forgiveness, and during almost the entire sermon, he had a big rock in his hand, and he talked about how when we hold on to forgiveness, or unforgiveness, I'm sorry, it's like holding on to a rock, like that rock. And he drew the illustration, like if I had to hold on to this rock for the entire day, how bad do you think my hand would hurt? And of course, it would hurt pretty bad. What if I had to hold on to this rock for an entire week? How bad do you think my hand would hurt? And how well do you think I'll be able to function? And of course, your answer is like, your hand will be terribly sore, and you wouldn't be able to do much, you wouldn't be able to do normal daily activities, right? If you had something in your hand the entire time. Then the question became, well, what if I had to hold on to this rock for a year? And then, of course, it just exponentially gets worse, right? And so he drew that illustration to, that's what unforgiveness does to us. And you cannot function normally and realize God's blessings in your life with holding on to unforgiveness. So that leads me to our next point. Forgiveness is a choice, not a feeling. It's something we have to activate and make a conscious effort to strive towards each day. And no, it's not easy, but it's worth it. I'm sorry doesn't mean that you are admitting fault, nor does it mean that you are a weak individual. It simply means that you are showing humility and you want to do what's in the best interest of your marriage. For the longest time, as Tab's already mentioned, she struggled with saying that, I'm sorry, especially when she didn't feel like anything's wrong. And so for the longest time, that caused ongoing conflict in our marriage because I never felt like she ever recognized her part in the conflict. And I never felt as though the conflict was resolved because she never would admit her by saying, I'm sorry. So that caused ongoing conflict for us. And maybe some of you are out there today and you're having the same issue. Let me tell you, it's not worth it. Granting forgiveness is a choice to set yourself free and your spouse free. It's also an act of obedience to your spouse and to God. James 4:6 says, God resists the proud, but gives grace to the humble. And Ephesians 4:2 states, be completely humble and gentle, be patient, bearing with one another in love. So to wrap this session up on forgiveness and communication and conflict resolution, for those of us who are followers of Christ, for those of us who say we believe in Jesus, forgiveness is the whole reason, that's the whole reason he came. It was the most crucial and significant gift that he gave us. It was the climax of his ministry. He came to this earth as a human, died a death that we were supposed to die, so that we have an opportunity to spend an eternity in heaven with him. He forgave us of our sins first. We were all forgiven first. So we don't have a choice. If we call ourselves believers, call ourselves followers of Christ, we too have to forgive. And what better person to start with than our spouse? All right? So that concludes this session. You have anything else you want to say?
No, because...
No. Trey, we have any questions from the session? It's hard to see with the lights.
One.
We got one question.
One second.
Oh,
okay.
Sorry. All right.
They're going to be right here.
Oh, question. I didn't understand the video for the first time either. If you care for someone, you will seek to remove the nail. Refusing to acknowledge the nail is dangerous and stupid behavior. Yes, that is true. If there is something in your spouse's life that is harming him or her, we do not want to ignore it. We definitely want to speak truth in love. The purpose of the video was not to illustrate that. The purpose of the video was to illustrate how men and women communicate differently and how men tend to want to fix and women want just to be heard. They just want us to listen. They don't want us to fix everything. But as you saw in that video, the man was just trying to fix it. He wasn't listening to the way the woman felt. He simply was just trying to fix what she felt, and it wasn't working for her. Good question. All right, that's more of a statement, I guess. Is that it? Have another one? Okay. All right. So we got a break on our agendas. We come back at 4:15 for session 3. We're broke. Trey is going to speak on money, marriage, and finance. We'll do another raffle. You don't want to miss out. We got two more baskets. We got a really nice custom sign. Say what? Coffee. We have coffee out in the lobby now if you would like coffee. And get you some more snacks. So everybody come back in at 4:15. We'll see you back then.